Hello and welcome to today's program as the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston hosts a conversation with David Morse, Council's global leader of influence. I am Sandia Bayou, Director of Development at the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. It's our hope that you and your families are doing well and staying healthy. Now, more than ever, it is important to stay informed about what is happening not only in our city, but around the world. The World Affairs Council of Greater Houston brings foreign affairs experts right into your home. David, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's my absolute pleasure to host you and to honor and to celebrate you today. Thank you for all your ongoing support of the Council, our programs that you participate as moderator, as well as some ongoing young professionals initiatives. Wanted to check in and see how you are doing, how your family is doing, and how the team of the DPM Consulting Associates currently doing.
Well, thank you very much for asking. Everyone's doing well. The first step is, healthy, happy as you can be under these conditions, I think.
Yeah.
Both my wife and I are trained as chemists, and so this looks like, or we watch the news, with a very large view of, oh, this is an experiment that's operating in real time. So that's a very different. For us, the main issue has been really the lack of travel. Now, I think everyone likely has the closing walls of everything, being around and stuck at home and too much. Our family has historically done travel in a lot of places, kids, my wife, myself. After we lived overseas for a few years, the kids became global citizens. So I think the presence and it's not the lack of itchy feet or something is the problem, if we have one. And that's a minor problem considering all the problems that are currently around. Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, and I can completely have the same feeling on travel or restriction of travel. So
yeah, exactly.
We can all return and enjoy it. David, we have gotten to know you, like I said, through various initiatives, but I want to make sure that I share some of your engagement in community and just highlight some of your accomplishments, career and otherwise. So what we know is that you are president and lead of the DPM Consulting and Associates. You have a record of accomplishments for commercial and technical agreements between international companies and with governmental entities. You are a member of various chambers, such as German American Chamber of Commerce, Australian American Chamber, the United States Association of Energy Economics, Houston chapter, as well as the U.S. Department of Commerce's District Export Council. That really shows a lot of your commitment and engagement in the community. I wanted to ask you, for other individuals who have so many opportunities to be involved, any best practices that you could share of how do you choose who do you belong to? And most importantly, how do you find time to attend to those obligations, right? The more you do, the more expectations are for you to deliver.
Yeah. So that's a good question, because sometimes, some days it seems like there's a lot of stuff to do, some days not. But to answer your question, I've always, and increasingly over my life, searched out broad experiences. And so to the extent that I'm, trained as a chemist, I'm data oriented. And so I'm even in the field of, let's say, human social sciences, I'm eager to just gain information and to pull stuff in. So generally speaking, everything I do is related to some, not even just interest, but maybe work practice that I'm doing. And a lot of that data gets processed, like all of us, subconsciously. It's not like everything has to be, there's no action. Information is good. And so like the chambers of commerce, I basically mapped out the world and wanted to try and find a chamber of commerce that was, could give me a feel of what's going on in the regions. That sort of logic is what led me to places like the World Affairs Council.
Oh, fantastic. I don't think I ever asked you, how did you decide or what took you in the direction of international consulting?
Yeah, and more specifically in international negotiation or negotiation period. My career has had about 20 plus years of doing the commercial agreements, like you mentioned earlier. That was after doing PhD in chemistry and some other stuff, and it really just grew to be I finally realized that the act of working with people in collaboration is what I really enjoyed. And so a few years ago, struck off on my own to do that and really be able to tell people like you, this is exactly what I love doing, and have always, now I realize I always wanted to do.
That's fantastic. It's best when I think results are best, we feel best when we go to work, when we love what we do, and definitely
exactly.
And we know that your company specializes, as you said, negotiation and mediation of long-term, high-value partnerships. The practice helps people create, of course, business success by integrating how we use language and culture to achieve lasting solutions. Wanted to ask you, David, if are there maybe some couple important points about your firm, DPM Consulting and Associates, that you would like to share with our viewers?
Well, it's consulting, so there's speaking and training and working on projects for people. But I think the biggest thing I'd like to convey to your audience is that negotiation for a lot of people is a very nerve-wracking activity. And what I would like to get across to them is that the tools that you see you use with your family or your coworkers are exactly the same tools that you see in the news of, negotiation around Brexit and stuff. And the only difference there is it's outside your comfort zone, but the tools are exactly the same. So I want to kind of give a positive message is, don't be afraid of things that look scary. They're probably much more common and familiar than you realize.
Great. So I think having a skill, I'm talking about me, negotiating with a 16-year-old teenager and with a 9-year-old, I think I could pretty much negotiate some larger agreements. So
I suspect you could as well. That's right. You just got to realize how they translate out into a different environment, something that's not in your familiarity. And then after that, it's practice.
Very true. Like anything else. I never asked you, do you speak any other foreign languages?
The answer is yes. And so other foreign, I do German, passable conversationalist in German. That's how at least I got around to being a moderator for the German ambassador for the World Affairs Council at a World Affairs Council session. That was very nice, and thank you again. And so German came up a couple of different ways. There was some high school, but then more importantly, a few years ago, my family and we lived in Germany for 3 years. So that, when you have to go and talk to someone at the grocery store or bakery, that's when it becomes real. I had some Spanish back maybe a decade ago for a job, but then my territory changed and that sort of dropped out. So that plus a desire, and I did start in Arabic, but I've just never had the time to go. It really fits in my model of what I'm looking for, different languages operating different ways. And something about that either I think rubbed off from me to my kids or from my kids to me, because my daughter is now like on her 5th language.
Wow.
She's a conversational, she speaks Arabic every day. She's got Farsi. And when those fail, she defaults to German from our time overseas. And our son lived in Indonesia for 3 years. And after about 4 months, he was speaking Bahasa. So wow. I think they rubbed off on me and have kept me kind of interested in language is a part of the toolkits that I use, not negotiating in another language, but how we use language. So absolutely. As much as culture and problem solving.
Absolutely. I think it's very much connected, right? Language,
yes,
culture,
absolutely.
traditions, expectations. You can't really take one without the other. So
exactly.
You know very well that education is very important to our council. It's our mission. Education is what we do.
Yep,
we educate from high schoolers to university students to middle school also, and we educate those who want to be learning something every day. And I always say that I definitely learn something every day. And look how many things I already learned just from our 15-minute conversation. So part of this opportunity, we had reached out to some of the high school students. If there are some questions that perhaps we could ask you. So some of the questions coming are from them. If you could provide your young yourself with advice, what would it be?
Yeah, that is a good one. As I sort of foreshadowed a little bit earlier, it took me a long time to figure out what I really enjoyed and went for. So if I were to suggest something, it's passion. Everyone sort of recognizes that passion drives you forward. It motivates you. And what I wish I had known 30 years ago or more was just how simple those motivations could be. And so spending the time to think really deeply about what's driving you, the likelihood is that it's much simpler than you realize. It's not, whatever springs to mind first for you, that's a good place to start, but that's not likely to be it. So introspection. If I had realized what I should be introspective about 30 years ago, I think that would have been my advice to my younger self.
Thank you. What are your 2 or 3 simplest guidelines for interacting, get to know someone from another culture? We've spoken quite extensively today, but there is kind of guidelines, perhaps how to interact with somebody, maybe from your times in Germany or other places, or welcoming people here. Yeah,
that's a good one. And I'll probably say they're much simpler than a lot of people probably think. And the first one, I'll say 2 of them. And the first one I'll say is, if you keep in mind that the person you're talking to is just another person, it opens up. We're almost designed as animals to look for the differences in things. There are so many more similarities between you and I and us and any other person on this planet, then we're coded to look for the differences, and the similarities are so much more. So that's the first thing. The person you're talking to is just a person. The second thing I would sort of drive home is the benefits of reading and educating yourself broadly. So I spend a lot of time, as I mentioned earlier, in groups that are sort of unfamiliar and talking about different things, trying to just absorb that kind of information. And when you're in a conversation with someone, all it takes is a little trick to say, oh, I remember this item. And I was having a conversation with someone from China at a Australian American Chamber of Commerce, and it just popped into my head about the differences in languages in China. And so I just asked a question. And that's the key. You don't espouse to someone, just ask a question. Oh, in your area, how different is the language? And then the conversation went on for an hour. So people are people. They're not anything more difficult to imagine than it's just another person. And educate yourself broadly so you can have something to relate to that other person.
Oh, that's very thoughtfully said. And I'm going to a little bit add, for those who don't know, but we as a World Affairs Council offer travel. And that's really one of the missions, is that education continues through travel. And it is when we come back from any destination, that's what people are surprised, to your point, to say that, I didn't expect it, that everybody was so welcoming and open. It just having that opportunity to meet people, to talk to people, it really opens the world so differently. So very much support what you're saying. One of the last questions from the students: what country or location surprised you and was much more interesting or fascinating than you expected?
For me, one of the things that really locked it in about what I wanted to do was living overseas. And basically we were living in Munich, Germany, and every other week I'd travel to Saudi Arabia. And the difference between those two, let's say, drove me to be much more introspective than I had been before, and really ask, what exactly is going in these situations. So my answer to the question is actually Saudi Arabia. The first few times there, you know, I think from looking out here outside in Houston, it's all green. Saudi Arabia can be looked at as a bleak country. It's dry, you know, and everything in the Middle East. So in the early times, it was very much the language is different, people are acting different, the landscape's different. And over the course of 3 years, I can remember there's a 3-hour drive from one city to another that I did very commonly. And I began to see the differences in the terrain. I'm also have a personal interest in geology. And so after a while realizing, oh, that's where, you know, the river used to run when it rained. And a little tidbit that I encourage almost everyone to do is go onto Google and do Google Maps satellite of Saudi Arabia, and you'll see basically the remnants of tens of millions of year old lakes or rivers that wrap around the entire country. And, you know, just little stuff like that. And so I have the appreciation went from, boy, there's a lot of dirt here and everyone's, you know, acting very differently to, oh, this is a very interesting, what's going on there? And so that Saudi Arabia is my answer.
That's fantastic. It's almost like a peeling onion, right? We have this, we just see the shell at the beginning, but then you don't, your trip number 6, 7, 8, you don't even see the desert anymore. You can start seeing other things that just sort of come out of
exactly.
And I'm gonna, Saudi Arabia was the place that we traveled as a council at the beginning of this year, and it's been really a place very much in demand. People are very curious, and we are waiting for the gates to open so we can take another group with us. So that it wasn't even planned, so I can't believe we are in the same mindset. Kind of last thoughts as we wrap up for our future global leaders, staying within education. Going forward, and we spoke a bit about it, what are some traits you see others should work on to help and grow them as the future global leaders?
Yep, so that also is a relatively easy answer for me. My tagline on my business is listening for success. So the first one is I cannot give any more significant advice to people other than listen. Do so much more listening than talking. And if your first reaction is to talk, stop yourself and listen more. That leads to patience. We live in a world that is driven by action, and patience is a much underrated virtue. So listen, have patience, and plan for the long game. What you feel like doing in the next 3 seconds, it's not necessarily the right answer to what your really deep desires are. And so nothing's black and white in this world. There are an enormous number of shades of gray. And if you just slow yourself down to try and peel that onion, to use your word, there's so much more there to learn and get it and be surprised about.
Oh, that's fantastic. So again, thank you so much, David. Wanted to recognize you, say thank you for your ongoing support of our organization, our mission, for being a friend of the council, and even today with the highlights that we spoke about, it really gives even more reasons to say this is what World Affairs celebrates when we nominate individuals like yourself to be recognized as the global leader of influence. So thank you for your time today. We can look forward to seeing you celebrating, and all the best wishes, and can't wait for the travel gates to open so we can continue to explore and learn the world.
All right. Thank you for your time as well.
Thank you, David.
Yep.